Hello everyone and welcome to another video in this channel. Today we're going to be going over some of the creations for the Lighthouse. However, before we start that, I did promise one of our students who submitted at the very last second. I was actually recording the video when he submitted. I finished the recording and immediately he submitted, and I promised him I would take care of his portfolio this time. Now, if you guys want to submit for portfolio review, there's actually a couple of submissions here on the Discord already. But if you haven't submitted for the next month, for June, you can do it right now. Down here on the link, there's the description for the Google Drive link. So we're going to be reviewing very quickly Cedric Francisco from Toulouse, France. Nice. So from what I can see here, my friend Cedric, you are going for character art. And I think I do remember seeing some of your stuff before, because I remember this Wanda Maximoff a couple of months ago. So in general, I can see that you have a good understanding of the proportions of the characters. Proportions are really important when we start. I'm going to go over to the last submission that you have right here, which is Siri. And let's do a little bit of critique right here. Ooh, we have a marmoset viewer. Perfect. So the first thing I look for when I'm like critiquing characters is, as I mentioned, proportions. And proportions wise, it seems fairly okay. I think her chest is a little bit too big, and I don't mean the breasts. I mean in general, like the chest, it seems a little bit too wide. Siri usually is depicted with like a smaller frame, so that's one of the things. Now I do see that you went really like intense on the details. What I mean by this is you did all of the belts, all of the like buttons, all of the armor pieces and everything, so that's pretty cool. But again, there's a couple of like points there or elements that don't seem to match perfectly. Now the roughness on the skin seems a little bit off as well. That's a very important part of the whole thing, and we can take a look at it here on the reflectivity. Okay, you're using reflectivity glossiness, which is like a diffuse and stuff. Or sorry, specular glossiness. I talked about this recently, and there we go. So if we go to the glossiness channel, you can see right here, especially on the skin, see how there's not a lot of variation? Pores usually on the skin will cause a lot of variation, and we should see more like white and dark areas all around the character. Same for the cloth. Look at this cloth right here, and a lot of the props actually, like the leather gloves right here, I would expect to see a lot more variation on the reflection, or in this case on the glossiness of your element. The reflectivity is fine. Remember, reflectivity is the amount of light that an object will reflects back, and this is perfectly fine. However, in the glossiness, it's very clean, and objects do not usually have this clean of a glossiness. Like I would expect to have this sort of like details, like what you have here on the metal, everywhere else. Everywhere else. Kelfor here as well. Look at this. We got like two weird splotches on the character that make that specific area look a little bit like weird. Like even that shadowing there. I'm not sure if you didn't do the... it seems like you forgot to do the... so I'm not sure if those are shadows or not. Let's go to the color. Okay, it's a shadow. I thought it was the ambient occlusion. No, it's a shadow. Also here on the colors, we can definitely increase the amount of texture that we can add to the character to make her look even better. Again, you kind of want to go for this sort of like intensity on the variations, especially here on the cloth. You don't want to have a lot of like solid objects because it makes it look very boring in general. Now let's take a quick look at topology. Topology is a little bit dense on the face. I mean, it's not bad. Actually, no, it's actually fine. How many polys? Yeah, 131,000 triangles. It's fine. We can definitely simplify a couple of them here and there. Like, there might be some elements where we can, like for instance, here on this dagger, you don't need all of these lines going down. Like we can definitely bring those numbers down for the character. But overall, in general, it looks good. I think this is a good concept. Now, here's my advice, my friend, for you. I think you're doing a lot of fan art, and fan art is really good to get the visibility because everyone can identify that this is Siri, that this is Geralt, that this is Wanda. But it is important that you also are able to take a concept that no one has heard about and transform it into something that you can do. So, I mean, just looking for like character concept, I can see you like fantasy, so we go character concept fantasy. You're gonna see a lot of concept arts, and some of them are really good, like this guy right here. Super simple, well, not super simple, but it's a really cool character. There's hair, there's armor, there's leather, there's cloth, there's even an owl. So there will be a lot of things that you can do to practice this character and generate something that looks really cool. So my advice would be that try doing a piece, either a concept of your own or a concept that's not that well known, to see how well you can capture the characters. Because It's again, fan arts are really good, but one of the, and I will always tell you guys about this, one of the problems about fan arts is that you're putting yourself at a disadvantage from the beginning. Why? Because someone else, usually a pro artist, already did the character, right? So unless you can match that character or that artist's work or surpass it, you're always gonna be seen as like the copy, right? Like the imitation. And that obviously brings you down on the scale of quality. So if you go for an original character, people won't have things to compare you to, and you will get a couple more points because again, there's not like a cultural, like mental way to compare it to. We've talked about the AI art and stuff like that. So if you have like a character idea, try doing it with an AI and just get the rough sketch. It might not be perfect, but you will get an idea of how it should look, and then you can do your own element. If you want to check any of our courses, do we have the banner? Yeah, there we go. So I got the demon character. It's the second to last one or third to last one. That one, I go over a lot of the techniques that I think could be helpful for a better result. One final thing that I'm going to say before we jump onto the exercise is the rendering. We definitely need to improve the rendering a little bit more. I know you're doing renderings inside of a Marmoset, which is fine, but we can play around with like cleaner lights, because right now the lights that we have are very, very, like, look at this, harsh, very harsh lights. You don't want to have harsh lights on your characters. It makes it look very fake. So going with some GI, like global illumination or ray tracing to make these things look a little bit better, a little bit more light. I also see that the colors are kind of dull on the elements, so a little bit more light could definitely help with the whole thing. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, before we jump into today's video, I just want to remind you guys that if you want to learn all of the things that I just talked about characters and stuff, we have all of our courses available in Skillshare. Hey guys, Abraham here. I just want to remind you guys that we upload all of our courses to Skillshare. Skillshare is this amazing site where you can access a ton of different content to learn, improve, and grow as an artist. We have all of our courses available to watch and learn from right now in Skillshare. You can check the description down here, and Skillshare is offering 1 free month trial to their premium membership. With this membership, you're going to be able to access all of our courses and watch and learn all of the amazing things that we cover with all of the softwares. So, what are you waiting for? Check Skillshare down here below. Very well. So today we're going to continue with the Lighthouse, and I wanted actually to use this one to really show you guys how we can take a very simple prop, a super simple prop, and make it amazing. Because one of the things that I feel like a lot of people struggle with when they're creating 3D art is that we feel impatient, or we just want to rush things and make them like super fast. I know I tend to do that here on the channel because I try to make things interesting, but I am normally, when I'm working in a project, I take my time, and things take time. So for instance, if I look for a LifeSaver vintage, like a vintage LifeSaver like this one right here, which is very similar to what we have right there. We got 2 of them right there. You can see that we have some really cool like images. Like even this one right here, it looks very nice. So the idea would be, if I want to do a LifeSaver, I'm not just going to do a Taurus and that's it. I really want to do something that looks really cool. I'm not sure if this is 3D. It kind of looks a little bit 3D to me because it looks a little bit too perfect, but I'm not sure. So let's look for another option right here. Cool. So I found this one, and I think this one looks really cool. Even the ropes and stuff make it look a lot more interesting, and it's not complicated. As you can see, it has a couple of like things. There's even some more over here, but yeah, I really like this one. I think this one is really cool. So let's copy this image or save this image, and we're gonna save this image where, of course, in source images or in any place that we can find. We're not in the place, but one of the places from our project right here. So I got source images, and actually, yeah, there we go. So let's call this, it's called Life Preserver instead of LifeSaver. LifeSaver, I think, is the candy. There we go. So we don't need to work on the LifeSaver in this scene. It actually might be a bad idea to do it here. So we're gonna go to our new scene, and we're gonna go to front view. We're gonna use this little shortcut here to go into our source images, and let's look for the Life Preserver. There we go. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger, and let's see what are the like intricacies of this thing. So the thing that I can see is it's probably made out of wood or something that floats, right? I don't think they had plastic back then. and it has these holes. Now the holes are probably the tricky part of the element. Like how are we going to be adding those holes into the thing? So let's start with a torus. It's a fairly simple one to start with. And I'm going to go to the inputs, and I'm going to change the radius to something that's a little bit bigger. So something like this. I'm actually going to move the image to center it a little bit more so that we can keep this on the center line. There we go. So yeah, that's it. That looks good. That's a good radius. Now, normally these things are a little bit flatter, or I've seen that they sometimes are a little bit flatter. So I'm just going to scale them a little bit down. There we go. Now, for those holes, one option is to actually build in the holes, like create the topology for the holes. And the other option is, or would be, to just texture them in, like create a sort of like fake way of texturing them. But I think I'm gonna show you one of the new tools from Maya 2024, and I think it's gonna work nicely. So I'm gonna create a cylinder, and it's gonna be an 8-sided cylinder. This is gonna be important because we're gonna be using booleans to get this to look a little bit cleaner. So we're gonna go 90 degrees. There we go. And if we take a look here, you're gonna see that we have one right there and one right there. It's kind of like in fourths, right? So I'm gonna grab the pivot point of this guy. I'm gonna center it right here. Or I'm gonna use a V to snap it. There we go. And then when we duplicate, we should be able to rotate this 90 degrees. And then duplicate it 180 degrees. And then duplicate it 270. There we go. So with that done, we should have 4 little elements right there, which we can scale. And we're going to combine into a single object. We're going to select the first one, the second one. We're going to go, here's the booleans, and we're going to say difference. It's actually, I think I made the wrong selection. Let's do, there we go. There we go. That's what we're looking for. So as you can see, we get this. I'm going to delete history, and we get the holes for our element. But now, of course, we need to clean up the topology because we have something called an engon, and engons are not something that we want to have right here. So there's a lot of ways in which we can do it, but I'm actually going to be using one of the newest tools inside of Maya. Let's see how it does. Usually automatic tools are not that great, but I think in this case it can work. So I'm going to use this retopologize option. What's the target face count for this thing? Well, right now, if we go display, heads up display, poly count, you're going to see that we are at 1,000 triangles. So that's perfectly fine. So I think 1,000 is a fair number. As you can see, it has a tolerance of 10%. So it can be a little bit over or a little bit below. I don't think I want to keep original, and we're just going to hit apply. Let's say ignore and continue, and let's see what we get. And there we go. So we get this. Is this the best thing that we can get? No. There's definitely like better results. If we do manual retopology, we can even get some better effects. But I don't think this is actually that bad. Like even if we do number 1, you can see how this thing smooths very nicely. So yeah, this I think works fairly nice. We even have some clean like middle lines that we can use for UVs. So I would consider this to be a relative success. So I'm going to duplicate this thing, and I'm going to call this LifeSaver HP because it's a high poly, or actually we're going to underscore this, underscore high. And this one's going to be named exactly the same, but with underscore low. Now the high one, I'm going to say mesh, and I'm going to smooth this. And I'm going to add 2 subdivisions to the smooth. Why? Because this smooth is what we're going to be baking down into the low poly. So all of these things that we see right here, which kind of looks like hardwood and everything, even like the asymmetry looks very nice. All of these things are going to be the ones that are going to be giving us the nice detail on the base. Now we go for the ropes, and the ropes are actually a little bit more complicated than what we had before. So you can see that we have a huge like thing going through the different holes, but that's part of what we want to do to make sure that this looks as believable. And this is what I was mentioning earlier about making sure that you spend enough time working on your assets so that you get a really nice result. So I'm going to start with the main rope. This is supposed to be just one rope, and it might be possible to follow up where this rope is, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. There's like a knot over here. There's the hole. So I think I'm just going to go through some of the holes. There we go. I can see kind of like stops right there. So I'm going to start with my mesh, or sorry, create. curve tools, and I'm going to create an EP curve. I'm going to start right here. So I know that this thing has to go through this hole. Then it goes down. It goes up. It goes back there. It goes up. It goes back here. Over here. And then it goes across that line. It goes back here. Across that line. I'm going to have to kind of like change things around. This one's going to go up through this side. Back there. Up through this side. And then through that hole. Goes through, it kind of looks like it goes through the back again. So it goes through the back. And that's where we end, roughly. I mean, it doesn't mean that that's exactly the way this is going to be. But as you can see, we get this super complex like thing. So I'm going to grab this thing right here, and I'm going to make it a template. I'm going to create a new layer down here. I'm going to make this a template so that we don't see it, and we can work a little bit better on the whole thing. And we're going to go, of course, to control vertex. And as you can see, we have a lot of control vertex. Now here, we're going to be using soft selection, which is letter B in your keyboard. And on the options of the movement tool for the soft selection, over here, soft selection, I'm going to change this to surface so that it only modifies the things that are close to that point and not everything that's like near it. Let's go to reference. There we go. And yeah, that's it. So now it's just a matter of like moving this thing and literally threading it across the whole thing. Now, if you're asking, is there an easy way to do this? Like, do I actually need to go through this? Of course, there's always shortcuts. We could use like live surface or something to snap this into other places or to snap it to the geometry and stuff. But I remember one of my teachers, he used to work on traditional effects back in the day. And he was explaining to us how they did the hair for characters, like Chewbacca, for instance. And they had to manually punch in all of the hairs for Chewbacca. So we asked him, well, wasn't there like a machine or something that they could have used to make this whole thing a little bit easier? And he's like, yeah, of course, there can be like automatic things. But people realize that in order to get the best possible result, the actual handcrafted approach was necessary. And I actually recently saw this. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the new like a Lord of the Rings like show in Amazon. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan as well. You guys know I love fantasy. So the armors there look really bad, to be honest. I thought the story was fine, but the armors were like not good at all. And I remember seeing the making of scenes of the Lord of the Rings, the original film, and there were a couple of guys, two guys I believe, that hand weaved all of the chainmail for the movies. And that sort of like dedication to the craft, that sort of like thing, that's what makes everything like super tight, right? So that's why this sort of thing where you actually spend the time and do it is very important to making sure we get a very nice result. I know a lot of people don't want to hear about it, but that's the reality of things. Cool things require patience. They require time. I know someone that doesn't like to hear this a lot are clients, because clients always want things like done super fast and super efficient, and they're like, why am I wasting so much time for you to just be like pushing and pulling these points around? Well, that's the way it's done. It's not that I want to take your money or anything. It's just it definitely takes some time to do it. Let's push this back. Trying to find where the next point is. Now, one thing we can do, but I don't want to do it just yet because it might crash. I don't think it could crash it, but it's a little bit risky. One thing we could do is do the sweep mesh already. We're going to be doing sweep mesh, of course, to create or make this rope go across the whole thing. So sweep mesh will make this whole thing transition into the next part. I'm kind of losing my... Where is this point? There we go. missing one point. There we go. It's this one. So the rope's coming down. And then it goes across this thing. Mainly what we want to avoid is having any like weird overlaps. That's the main thing we're trying to hide right here. There we go. You can scale these points, by the way, to flatten them. It's a very, very cool way to clean them up. Now, I'm not going to torture you guys. This is probably going to take me a couple of extra minutes, and we're already at a 20-minute mark. I know we all have things to do other than learn more 3D. So I'm going to pause this real quick. I'm going to finish doing this, and then we'll jump into the bakes, okay? There we go. So this is the sweep mesh. I just grabbed the curve, and I did a sweep mesh, which is this one right here. And I changed some of the parameters to make it a little bit thinner. And once I had that, I was able to create this whole thing right here, which is looking quite nice if I may say so myself. So now, just a final little tweak right here. I'm gonna go control vertex. This one right here, I feel like this loop's looking a little bit weird. So I'm just gonna tighten it up a little bit more, make it hang a little bit looser. There we go. So as you can see, this creates a really, really interesting sort of like effect for the whole thing, which is what we want to go for. Like when people see this in the game, we want to make sure that they see it and they're like, "Oh, that looks cool. That looks like a cool like old lightsaber." And even though it did take a little bit longer than if we wanted to just do a very basic texture, we're getting a nice result. Careful with this sort of like twists and turns right here. So I'm gonna push some of these points up and around to make sure that we're like properly going through the thing. There we go. Same thing here. We can relax this. I kind of want to like loop this around the other one. So we might need to use some of these points. There we go. Now in the sweep mesh, one thing you can do is increase the precision. This is of course going to increase the amount of points that we have. But if we increase the precision, we're going to get a nicer effect. I also have this optimize option set on so that we can properly capture the whole thing. There we go. Now we go to the texturing side of things. So this is the rope. That's perfectly fine. Let's isolate it real quick. I'm going to delete history to get rid of the sweep mesh, and we're call this rope_low. And I am gonna control D to do a rope underscore. Actually, yeah, let's do it just in case, because sometimes the bakes, if you don't have a high poly for all of the things, you might get a slight problem. Now for UVs or for the UVs that we need to do, the rope already has its UVs. It's actually gonna have its own like rope UV. You can see it right here. It's a super thin line. That's what I'm gonna leave. Like I'm not gonna change anything. We could do like a couple of extra cuts. Actually, now that I think of it, I think that's the best idea. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to this guy right here. Probably to the UV. Probably going to be a little bit easier. And I'm just going to start cutting some lines right here. So I'm going to go to cut and sew. We're going to cut there. And I'm going to do like a couple of sections. This is going to make the rope a little bit smaller. Yes, we're going to have seams so that the rope might not look as clean. But it should also give us more resolution to add some like ambient occlusion stuff. The only thing I'm really like concerned about is I need to make sure that all of this like cuts that I'm adding keep the rope straight. Because the texture that we're going to be using to add the rope should be straight. There we go. So now I can grab all of this UV shells. So I'm going to press Control L to lay them out. And there you go. As you can see, we got more cuts for the rope. And that should give us enough room for this guy right here. So I'm going to grab this guy right here. I'm going to say UV. UV. Let's do a camera base mapping. And then it's pretty much a torus. So half and half is perfectly fine. I'm going to say UV 3D cut. We're going to cut one across. Make sure it goes across. Perfect. One on the center. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So we go UV, UV editor, and we unfold this. Whoa. Oh yeah. My bad. We have holes. Anytime you have holes or an object that has like this sort of things, you also need to cut those holes. cut right there. Ooh, we got a spiral right there. I hate spirals. Let's see if on the other side we don't have a spiral. No, we have spirals everywhere. Okay. In the case of spirals, that's the problem with like manual retopology or automatic retopology. I just go across this and then just create like a nice little like stair step right there. So that cuts it in half without creating a spiral. That's a nice square right there. And that should be a nice square. There we go. So now with that done, we should be able to control U, and there we go. Now I'm not going to use layout for both of these elements, because if I use layout for both of these elements, we're going to get a weird result. So in this case, I'm actually going to, whoa, what happened to my rope? Did I not? Or did I do, oh, I did it to the high poly. Wow, okay. Oh, I renamed it wrongly. Did I rename it wrongly? Okay, let's just call this rope low. This is going to be rope high. There we go. Let's hide this one for just a second. Cool. Okay, so now that we have this, we're going to go to the options here. And I'm just going to grab these big donuts. I'm going to make them smaller. And I'm just going to fit them right here on the space. I might need to make everything a little bit smaller, especially the ropes, because these things should have more priority, right? There you go. Cool. So now we grab both objects. I'm going to assign a new material to them. Arnold or Maya, whatever. Lambert. Let's delete history. And we'll just call this LifeSaver. And we're going to export. So file, export selection. We're going to go to our assets. I believe, yeah, Lighthouse. Here we're going to have LifeSaver. And then we're going to grab the high polys. The rope high poly I'm going to smooth. So I'm going to hit smooth once. Should be enough. And we're going to save file, export selection. It's going to be LifeSaver high. There we go. So now we go to Substance Painter, and we're going to texture this very quickly. As you can see, it's a relatively easy texture. It's just a couple of paints and plastics. Let me open PureRef, by the way, so that we can have the reference of the LifeSaver over here. Control B. There we go. Cool. So here I'm just going to say File, New. We're going to select our asset here real quick. Live, assets, Lighthouse, grab the LifeSaver. 2K is perfectly fine. DirectX is perfectly fine because we're going to Unreal. And there we go. Now we go to our baker. And we're going to bake selected textures. Sorry, we need to first add the high poly. There we go. And very important, we're going to use match by mesh name. Okay, this is very, very important because we're going to look for _low and _high on this, guys, on ambient occlusion, and on thickness. The reason why I want this is I don't want the rope to be influencing the textures of the LifeSaver. And this is because if we later want to have LifeSaver without the rope or the rope without the LifeSaver, we need to like separate the base into different like portions. Did it work? I think. Oh, okay, let's do 2K textures. Let's bake again. Okay, seems to be working. Yeah, we get a nice like smooth result right there. And now we can start texturing. So I do believe I have a rope element. I got this like stylized rope manila that we use for the book. I'm just going to use it as a placeholder right now. I'm going to add a black mask. I'm going to use only this to the object. There we go. And now what we need to do is we need to increase the tiling quite a bit so that we can start seeing the sort of like rope effect. I'm going to get rid of the hide information. I just want the color information. Or if we are going to keep the hide information, I'm going to go to hide and just like reduce this quite a bit. And there we go. See that? Like everything looks like or it starts looking like a rope because we got this thing going through the whole thing. We can play around with the rotation as well if we want to make this a little bit more like inclined or less inclined. I think something like this works nice, and maybe a little bit more tiling. There we go. Not bad. Cool. Later on we can make it a little bit dirtier and stuff, but yeah, as you can see, that's the reason why doing it with with the proper effects was necessary. Let's now start adding the basic things. So this is going to be a wood element. So I'm going to use this wood rough as my base. It's going to be right here. I'm going to Control G, create a new black mask, and just select the element. There we go. And the reason why I want to have the wood on the underside is so that we can do a little bit of scratches and see we're going to do the paint, and we're going to see some of the effects on top of the wood. So I'm going to change the options here on the wood to something called triplanar projection. By the way, all of these things that I'm doing and using, you can find all of these elements inside of the Substance Painter classes that we have on the channel as well, on the Udemy and on Skillshare. So with this done, I'm now gonna add a paint layer, or just like a basic plastic matte. There we go. And I'm gonna sample the color that we have over here, which is this sort of like white. Make it a little bit lighter. There we go. I'm actually going to go to the wood rough, and I'm going to get rid of the hide information. Or again, just go into the hide layer and minimize it a little bit, because I feel like that's a little bit too much. There we go. And then this one, I'm definitely going to add a dirt pass. So I'm going to add a generator or a black mask. I'm going to add a generator, and I'm going to add a dirt generator. And a dirt generator. This is going to make the paint look like washed out in certain areas. I'm going to increase the contrast quite a bit. I'm going to invert this thing. I'm going to play around a little bit with this sort of effect. Look at that. That's the kind of like scratches and things that we want to see here. Now, usually with the paint, I always like to change the mode to something that like adds or subtracts from the color. But in this case, since it's supposed to be paint, I'm gonna leave it like this, so just like normal. Yeah, so that gives us the nice like scratches on the paint. Let's build a couple of more areas. As you can see here on the LifeSaver, we got like moss or some sort of like humidity, and we got the red paint as well. So I'm gonna add another plastic matte. I'm actually gonna make this a little bit glossier. Let's go for like a dark red. There we go. Make this a little bit glossier. Black mask. And I'm going to go to number 4. I'm going to use select faces to select a specific like section. This is one of the reasons why having the torus as a base shape was really handy, because as you can see here, we can very easily select like a quarter of the torus, because all of the faces are following the proper proportions. There we go. And we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Perfect. That looks really good. It doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical. This is one thing that I sometimes tell my students is like, when we do 3D, things tend to be really precise, right? Like really exact. So if we can every now and then make things not perfect, because that's how we humans do things, like, and nothing is like absolutely perfect all the time, we're going to be able to get something that looks really, really cool. So now that we got this, I'm also going to add a generator. Going to be a dirt generator, and I'm going to multiply this generator against the mask that I was using. I'm going to increase the contrast there just to give it a sort of like old look. Now, one more thing, I'm going to add a paint layer, and you can see that the borders are really clean. Again, that's not something that usually happens. So I'm going to start like manually. Here's where the artist hand comes into play. I'm going to start manually like deleting or blurring out some of the borders. Not everywhere, right? Like we can try to keep some of them a little bit cleaner. But it's a good way to add a little bit more variation to the textures. Cool. Now I am going to change this to overlay, I think, to make, yeah, there we go. Look at those like nice dark colors that we get there. So this is a nice thing. Now on the rope, I'm also going to go and desaturate the rope a little bit more. I know this is like stylized rope, so we might need to change things a little bit. What I can do here is I could add like another layer, just a color layer. Go for like a gray color. Add a black mask, only select the rope. And then use an overlay, like darken things, and just tone this down, or just keep it normal and just decorate kind of like mute the colors a little bit with an extra layer. That could help. And we can, of course, change the color of this layers. I think that sort of like green color looks interesting. There we go. That multiply looks really good. So we go from this to this with like a nice like dark green layer on multiply. Now, if we take a look at this, there's like scratches and things. I always like adding some sort of like scratches. So I'm gonna bring back the wood material that we had before. This wood material on top. I'm gonna add a black mask. Right click, add a fill layer, and I'm gonna go for scratches. As you can see, that's gonna give me scratches everywhere. Again, looking quite nice. I'm going to change this to linear dodge or to like an overlay. I think overlay looks a little bit better. Just play around with this thing right there to make sure that it's not super obvious. But as you can see, it definitely adds another layer of complexity to the whole thing. And finally, we got this sort of like moss thing. I don't think I have a moss material right here. Got this thing right here. But for this one, another option that we can do is just grab any material that has like texture to it, like this leather or like the mortar. Like as long as there's like, you know, visual interest on the element, you can just change the color for like a dark green, and then on the roughness, I'll bring the roughness down, and it can like pass as moss a little bit. Now I'm gonna do this a little bit more manually. I'm gonna go to my brushes. I'm gonna look for this dirt 3. Like spots. I'm just gonna start adding a little bit of moss over here. Of course, this one's gonna be like an overlay. I think the color's a little bit too green. I'm gonna go a little bit more towards the yellows. There we go. And we can, of course, like lower the opacity a little bit. And moss, you're usually gonna find on the places where humidity gets like accumulated. So there's like a lot of ropes and stuff. We're gonna see this like happening. Then we can remove some of the elements. Just play around with the overall effect right there. Press shift, always press shift to like move things around. There we go. Not bad. Perfect. And that's it. With that done, we pretty much have a nice asset here for our life preserver. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to do, to be honest with this one. But I really like how this is looking. Probably a little bit more rough on the moss, so that it shines a little bit better. And there we go. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I know this was a long video, but we haven't had a long video in a while, so I was feeling in the mood of doing something a little bit more interesting. And yeah, as you can see right here, this asset is ready. So now the only thing that we need to do is export these textures, and it's gonna be ready to go into Unreal, into our scene. On the next time we go back to the lighthouse, I want to talk about modularity for all of the wood planks and things like that. So stay tuned. If you wanna be notified when we upload our next video, make sure to hit the little subscribe button, the little bell notification, and yeah, that's pretty much it for it, my friends. We're at, I think at the time of this recording, we're already at 37,000 subscribers also, so we'll probably have a celebration like that soon. And that's it, my friends. Thank you very much for your support. Make sure to join the Discord, submit your portfolio, our Support Nexus, all the things that we have, and I'll see you back on the next one. Bye-bye.